You're watching Global Trade This Week with Pete Mento and Doug Draper.
Well, hello to another edition of Global Trade This Week. I am one of your co-hosts, Doug Draper, and my other co-host is on the other side of the United States, Mr. Pete Mento in lovely New Hampshire. Pete, how you doing today?
I'm good, buddy. It's funny that you mentioned our geographic differences because I have been in my sleepless nights trying to figure out where I want to live again. And I've decided rather than putting that much pressure on myself, I'm going to pick a bunch of places. And then Amy and I are going to go travel and see them. And maybe something will inspire us. I don't know. But, I love Colorado. But I have this list of cities where you're less likely to be engaged in a disaster, like a natural disaster.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, Boulder is one of them. Like Boulder is listed as one of the safest to avoid some catastrophe happening. And it's in the top 10. There's other ones in there, like, Charlotte, North Carolina, and I can't remember. Minneapolis was one of them. It's just like, cities where the weather is less likely to take you out than other places. And I thought Boulder was interesting because, you guys get some for real snow in Colorado. But anyway, I'm all about looking at like New Mexico and Wyoming and Montana right now, and
good.
Like you said, end up just staying wherever the damn kids are. So it's fun to have a fantasy.
Yeah. Well, there's a million jokes in there about Boulder and being safe that I just can't think of off the top of my head. So I'm not even going to try to pull one out by any stretch. But yeah,
I'll help you out. I'll help you out. Just came to me. A city with that many safe spaces for people's feelings would probably be a pretty safe place to live. How about that?
Yeah, there you go. That's perfect. Chalk it up.
Would is it Fort Collins? Is that the right name?
Yeah, Fort Collins up north, Colorado State.
Would that be kind of the anti-Boulder, or is it not that far off of Boulder?
I don't know if you can yin and yang those two, but it's certainly it could be pitched that way in the media to talk about the differences, and that is the case to some degree.
Yeah.
So,
and we should just talk about this and get this out of the way, Doug. I am growing my beard longer, so I don't know if I've just been around Keenan too much or what the case may be, but I have been growing it out. So that is why everyone is seeing a much hairier Sasquatch-like Pete lately.
Yeah,
I'm just letting it all hang out. Let it all hang out, buddy. I'm still shaving my head, but there will come a day, Doug, when I just stop cutting the hair. I just stop. I'm just going to quit. And that's when you know that I'm just a couple of years away from telling this whole industry to kiss off. So when that happens, you'll definitely know, pal.
You'll know. You'll pull a Lovie Smith. I saw that guy the other day coaching, and are you kidding me? I was like, who is that guy? And then crazy. Interesting stuff.
I saw Deuce McAllister in New Orleans a couple of years ago, and if you don't remember who he is, he was a running back for the Saints, and he was very good. But he is the size of, I don't know if you remember Nell Carter from Give Me a Break, NBC, 1980s. He looks about the size of Nell Carter right now. Like I don't know if he just stopped going to practice and stopped stepping on the scale or what's going on, but Deuce is a big boy.
Yeah.
And apparently he's also been known to let the beard go. So I can't wait.
Yeah, the thing just popped in my mind. I can't believe I remember this, but the other character on there was a guy named Rerun. Remember him?
No, different show. You're thinking of What's Happening. Doug, don't even start with me with 70s and 80s television shows, okay? All right, because it was Raj and Rerun. I loved that show. I love that show to death. And they would go to Roz was the lady who ran the diner they hung out at, and Rerun would start doing his popping and locking. I loved every second of that television show. Keenan is right now, while we're doing this, he's on his phone like, what's happening?
What?
Oh, and the follow-up, what's happening now? When they actually had a spin-off of that show. That's how sad and pathetic I am. I have a friend of mine who's obsessed with older television shows. He has an incredible Twitter feed called Poncho's Disco-Rama, where he takes pictures. For those of you who are not following on Twitter, he's definitely worth the follow. He'll take a picture of one of the nights of an old TV guide from like, Tuesday, September, whatever, in 1983. And he'll just go through the shows that were on that day. And I'm like, oh my God, TV was so good, but it was so bad at the same time, but it was so good. Doug, were you a Hawaii Five-O guy? Were you a Magnum, Hawaii Five-O, Simon and Simon?
No, probably Hawaii Five-O. I like that one. That was good. And then this one will take you way back. You remember that show in the 70s called Emergency?
Oh, Emergency was the bomb. Emergency, 1 out of 12. God, there was another one, right? There was another one that was about.
That's the only one I can remember. That was.
Man. Yeah.
You've seen it. I saw it recently, and it's so bad. I can't even believe that it was prime time, must watch TV. It's so bad.
But we loved it when we were kids. There was a show called Doctari that you might not remember, but it was about a family that lived out in Africa on a wildlife preserve, and they would drive around with their dart rifles and their Range Rovers sticking out of the. I love that show. I watched a couple of minutes of it on YouTube the other day, and I said, I don't know just how much drugs my parents were doing when they conceived me, but apparently it was a lot. If I found it that entertaining in the 1970s, but many of those shows don't stand up, unfortunately, pal. But like Rockford Files, Columbo. Amy and I have started watching old movies again, so we're kind of on a Hitchcock kick right now. But I'm trying to not get myself sucked into too much of the new television because I got so much to watch, man. It's getting kind of ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, you know what else is incredibly entertaining is this show that you and I do right here, right now, called Global Trade This Week. Yeah. Brought to you by Cap Logistics. And we'll kick this one off. And I was driving in and Pete, so audience, we're doing 3 topics today. One is the big one, the elephant in the room that we've all talked about. And all I could think of, speaking of old TV shows, is the Brady Bunch, when Jan was so frustrated with Marcia, and all she could say was, Marcia, Marcia, Marcia. So this topic is all about China, China, China. So there's the best segue I got on this one, Pete. So I got some thoughts. You got some thoughts. You just jump in.
I'm going to start with this, right? So this is a difficult topic for us to discuss. And you want to talk about an elephant in the room, right? So I have a visa. I have a business visa for China. And I got it maybe 4 years ago. So I've still got 6 years left on it or so, And, what we're talking about today is the very difficult way that people have been living in China in certain cities for as much as 100 days now on lockdown, where they're not getting to food, they're not getting to the ability to communicate with their friends and relatives all over the country. And they can't say anything about it. They can't do much about it for the most part. But what we're seeing now is people actually out in the street protesting. And that's, Doug brought that up this morning. He said, why don't we do this together? And the first thing that came across my mind was, man, do I need to go to China soon? Should I be worried about what I say, how I say it, and where I come off on this side of the topic? Because, to be very honest, Doug, it's not difficult for the Chinese Communist Party to decide that they've got enough, they have more than enough opinionated, bearded white dudes running around right now. We don't need one more. So how effective, the effectiveness is such that we even, as companies that work in international trade, you and I have to be concerned about how vocal and I guess negative leaning we are about this subject. But to give people some background, and Doug, I'm sure you've got some more on it as well, China has taken a zero COVID stance. And what that essentially means to those of us who are not in Chinese public policy class is very simple. If they come across a certain incredibly low threshold of people who happen to have this version of the disease, they shut down entire geographies. Now they're doing, in their opinion, they're doing much better on limiting just how big a geography we're talking about. But there's one right now that's happening that's going to be delaying the ability for us to get the iPhones out, the new iPhones. A number of these have slowed down the exportation of automotive parts, critical parts of chemicals and heavy industry that we're not seeing exports on. Not to mention the fact, Doug, that things have not been very hot for the Chinese economy to begin with. And when I usually talk about this, I say that there's the public health safety, 1.4 billion people. It's difficult to manage and to lead that many people. But there's the other side of me that says that part of this is just making sure that people are reminded exactly who's in charge. Mm-hmm. So, it's a difficult thing for us to tiptoe around, but from a logistics perspective, this has become very real. If you think about where we were last year when Shanghai was closed around the same time, the ripple effects on the global economy, on our world and logistics, it was heavy felt. Air freight, ocean freight, the ability for people to get a hold of what they wanted. And that tail whip, when it started opening up again, it was difficult to keep up with it. But now in the down economy, it doesn't seem to be as difficult for the rest of the world. It just seems really hard on the people in China.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, there's been references to Tiananmen Square and the upheaval and discourse going on over there would be comparable, or haven't seen it at this level since 1989. But when I did a little legwork on that, Pete, the one thing is that Tiananmen Square was three things. It was a protest. It was a massacre because people were shot and thousands were injured. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, you got Tank Man, who was the iconic image of that whole Tiananmen Square situation. The difference now is social media and the ability to spread, talk, and be sounding board to what's going on out there is just leaps and bounds because of the social media. The thing that I wanted to hone in on is specific to the logistics and supply chain, and you just made mention of it. We're starting to see delays with zero COVID zero policy out there. And I think what's going to happen, which was similar in 2021, when Chinese New Year hits, and if some of these workers can get the hell out of there and go back home, it'll be very difficult, or I don't want to say unlikely, but you get home, why come back? If you can get out, why would you come back to that situation and those regulations and standards that are in place? So I think we're starting to see it. But if things don't change dramatically, you're going to see post-Chinese New Year. I don't want to use evening news terms like apocalyptic because I don't think it's at that well. But that's when we're going to see a pretty substantial blip. Because if you can get out, Chinese New Year, going home, we saw it happen right after the 2021 Chinese New Year. It's going to happen again if this continues to rear its head. Or, as simple as it may be, Pete, they squash it, they meaning the Chinese government, pretty damn fast, like Tiananmen Square. But I don't think that's going to happen with the outreach and the tools available to speak your mind through TikTok and all the other social media. So my whole point in this one is I think there's going to be an impact post-Chinese New Year because workers are just not going to come back and just not put up with it.
What I worry about, Bud, is you just said it, right? Tiananmen Square. I think you and I were both just getting out of high school, right? Is that what that happened? Mm-hmm. I think so. Yeah, it was like our senior year or something or whatever. Yeah. And I remember being just oblivious to the import of what was going on. I still remember watching CNN and all the rest of it and being like, wow, this seems pretty crazy. But then I came to school and we had this absolutely incredible history teacher, and his name was Colonel Spaulding. And Colonel Spaulding, he had faked his age to go in the army during World War II. I think he said he spent his 16th birthday in France, somewhere getting shot at. Really faked his age. And then went back after he graduated from college, went back in the Army as an officer. He was one of the first Green Berets. And he went to Vietnam. And the guy stayed in the Army forever. The guy came out as a colonel. And I remember going to school afterwards and Colonel Spaulding saying, is everybody watching the news of what's going on in China? And do you understand the differences of what it means to be an American and to have access to the ability to say your mind, speak your mind, and for our press to be able to put those opinions out? And we had what was one of the very first real adult conversations in my life about the ability for that information to spread, and how it's difficult to keep. He brought up Watergate, how it's difficult to keep something that's devastating. And I wonder what Colonel Spaulding would say today when you've got, like me, any knucklehead with a LinkedIn page is whipping out what's going on around the world on news. You and I have a weekly television show with our laptops. and some, shaved down Sasquatch in Denver, Colorado, who produces the whole thing. They have that in China now, like you're saying, all these years later. And there are thousands of people in the street in a country where dissent can end you up in prison pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. And they're saying what they think about it. And I don't care if you're a truck driver, if you're working in warehousing, if you're air freight, ocean freight, working at a port, there has to be a degree of fear associated with what could be happening right now. And as Americans, so I'm going to bring it back to logistics, we're constantly talking on the show about supply chain resiliency. Constantly. The amount of faith that we have in the politics of China to keep things running, it's almost blind faith that we don't have to worry about some sort of political turmoil getting in the way of our supply chains. It's exactly what zero COVID has done. And it appears to be ramping up as we speak, man. So I think that there's nothing, we don't talk about politics. We try really hard not to on the show. But I think as professionals in transportation and logistics and supply chain, we have to begin to consider how political unrest can negatively affect the supply chains of ourselves, of our clients, of the people that we advise, because this can go sideways fast, Doug. And if it does, it's going to mean a lot more than just bad supply chains. It can mean a lot of pretty awful situations for the people that we work with, many of us that are employees of ours, many of us, and how this could turn out. So, yeah, we should be watching it. It should be a bigger news story than a murder in Idaho. It should be a much bigger news story than what stupid thing Meghan Markle has said lately. This is probably the most important, impactful story, other than the invasion of Ukraine so far this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you nailed it. Well, I think we're going to pop into our halftime show, brought to you by Cap Logistics, caplogistics.com. Pete and I wouldn't be sitting here bantering back and forth without them. So check them out. Take a look. I'm going to go first because I like yours to end, right? Okay. And we talked about politics and how we want to stay away from it on our show. But I want to jump right into it and bring up some politics stuff. But this is kind of comical, right? So I just saw the other day that we are officially in the lame duck session of Congress. So for a quick reminder, it's the period after an election and before the new Congress has been sworn in, defined as lame duck, which means not a whole lot gets done. And I just started thinking about that. That's like where else in the entire world, in any industry that can simply just check out and fully admit that they're just kicking the can down the road and literally doing nothing other than window dressing for 6 weeks, 7 weeks. I mean, can you imagine if that happened in our industry? I mean, this is, specific to supply chain and logistics. Just, hey, I kind of just, it's after the holiday, or it's, holidays are just starting and we kind of don't really want to work because it doesn't really matter because we got to go for next week. I mean, it wouldn't play. Like the economy would shut down. But yet our administration and Congress are, not only is it happening, but they give it a name, for God's sakes, lame duck sessions, which means we're not going to do jack crap for 6 to 7 months or 6 to 7 weeks until new Congress is sworn in. It just baffles me that I don't know. I don't want to get too political on this stuff, but anyway, lame duck session. Are you kidding me? Any other industry in the world would be catastrophic. And if you ran a business that way, you would be out of business. So there's my little rant on the lame duck session and how much of a joke it is, in my opinion.
Well, having been a DC nerd for quite a long time there and managing to live inside of that beltway, the term's very fitting. That idea of a wounded duck. Nothing's taken off, nothing's going anywhere, and it's just going to die. So there's no point. There's no point in doing anything right now because that duck is lame. It is wounded. Just waiting for something to kill it and take it away. It is worthless. And then I was thinking of, just as you were talking, like, are there times in this industry, I'm like, well, what about Chinese New Year? And no. What about holidays? No. Like, I have, in the middle of Chinese New Year, had people in China, like in the middle of the holidays, being like, I need something done right now, man. Like, this is a business where I was on the phone today, and my current position is such where I work with mostly people that are on my level of what I'm doing right now. They're all in Canada. They're on Montreal and Toronto, and last Thursday and Friday were just like last Thursday and Friday as far as they were concerned. It was like, oh, we forgot today's your big eat turkey get fat day, American. So too bad, but hey, can you call someone for us and take care of this? This is one industry where nobody cares what the date says on the calendar.
Mm-hmm.
Bring the pain, man. And what's crazy is you kind of find out if you're made for this when you first learn to respond to crap like, but it's my vacation, it's Valentine's Day, it's my anniversary. Oh, I don't care. Where's my freight?
Yeah.
I need a truck and I need it now. So who do you think paid for that vacation? Let's go. Like it's an industry where when you're good at it, your customers come to depend on you. You're just going to work all the time, but it's rewarding, and I think that's why you and I, after 75 years, are still doing it.
No, I get it. It's a badge of honor. It's pride. We'll get the job done. It doesn't matter. Air, ocean, trucking, ground, doesn't matter. People just make sure it gets done. So I'm very proud of our industry and how we do not back into a lame duck session. We're always moving forward. So anyway, what you got, Pete?
Mine is not nearly as fascinating as yours. So I live in a divided household with regards to Christmas. Everyone around me seems to think that there is absolutely nothing wrong with putting up Christmas decorations whenever the hell you feel like. There is nothing wrong. If you wanted to have Christmas up before Thanksgiving, so when people came over for Thanksgiving and there was a tree in the living room, hey, that's cool, right? Like, let's play Christmas music in the car in October, right? And this is normal now, right? It's just normal. And when do you take your Christmas stuff down? People are they got attitudes with that. So in my way of thinking, don't put any Christmas stuff up until after Thanksgiving. Every holiday deserves its time. And then once Christmas is over with, I want it gone. Mm-hmm. Like December 26th, I want it gone. Because to me, 12 days later is when you start Mardi Gras, which is, it's the most important holiday in my entire year. So Amy just gave me a look as she walked past me, like, shut it, right? So day after Thanksgiving, you can start with the never-ending, like Holly on Sirius XM, listening to Christmas music. You can put up your Christmas tree and hang the stockings with care and yada, 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 yada. But December 26th, want it gone. Mm-hmm. Want it gone. But here's the thing. I don't have any say in any of this. It will be done when it's done, when they want to do it. And it will come down when she feels like it's going to come down. I have nothing to do with the decision, Doug. So 2 questions. When is it okay for decorations to come up and go down? And second of all, do you feel like you have any power whatsoever in that decision as the man of the house?
I love when you ask these questions. So the weekend of Thanksgiving, right? So big fan. Our family, my kids are in college. They came home, great 4-day week. So we trimmed the tree, bought the tree, set it up, did the whole thing as a family. So Saturday after Thanksgiving, and then literally, Pete, I have taken the tree down on Christmas Day before, and because it's pretty much dead. And my next door neighbor, he made a comment. He said it's it's Christmas at the Draper house when Doug is dragging a dead tree through the backyard and chucking it out in the alley to be recycled. And then when I feel like who was it? Dan Aykroyd in Trading Places when he's got that fish, he's all mangled and just looks disheveled.
Salmon. Yeah,
he's got the salmon. Just bah humbug. I mean, open the presents, and let's shut it down. I mean, Pete, I'm not even kidding. There was probably more times in the last 20 years that I've chucked that tree on Christmas Day than I have not, and it's just time to go. So I'll go a little bit early, but to answer your question, the Saturday after Thanksgiving, Christmas Day in the evening, the party's over. It's time to move on.
You're a mean one, Mr. Grinch. I don't necessarily disagree. I just know that's not. I don't have a choice, man. Like they will go up when they go up. They will come down when they come down. If there needs to be more, go buy it. Like I don't have a choice in any of this, and I'm fine with that because it's, it makes everybody else so damn happy. But I do have one line I don't like cross, and that's that I don't like presents for me. I think it's a waste. So I have everything I could ever want. Don't buy me stuff unless I've specifically asked for it. And I don't need it. The kids go crazy, and he goes crazy, right? They love all that. And that's wonderful because I love giving presents, but I don't like getting them because it just feels like a waste on me. You want to give me a great present? Leave me the hell alone for a couple hours. How's that for a great present?
How you like them apples? Right.
So there you go. That was Halftime, brought to you by our friends at Cap Logistics. And Doug and I have just proven that we really are a couple of just cranky old curmudgeons at this point. We hate everything, but we love Cap Logistics, and we love our viewers, and we love our listeners, and at least Doug loves Keenan, and I love him too. He knows I love him. For all of you that, every time I see somebody, and I'm like, do you watch the show? And they're like, why are you so mean to Keenan? I love Keenan. We didn't mean to him. I love the guy. I think he's incredible. But why do you always break his nuts on the show? And I'm like, well, because it's fun. Yeah. He's like Wilson on the old Home Improvements, where you only see the top of his hat over the fence. He's fantastic. But if people get too much of Keenan, it's gonna wreck the magic. So unless we don't want his head getting too big and he's gonna start his own podcast, we don't need that.
Very true. Very true.
Yeah. But to learn more about Cap Logistics, visit them, our friends at Cap Logistics, at caplogistics.com, and that will take us to our second topics. So I guess, Doug, you can go if you want to.
Sure. So this one's been kind of heated and very controversial. Our show, that is, up until now, we got some politics, we got China, we're talking about lame duck sessions, and of course the holidays. So this one's pretty mundane, but I saw something maybe a week or two ago about there's a push to standardize the e-commerce sales tax. Now, sales tax, as far as the e-commerce sales tax, there's like 45 states, I think, that already have some type of sales tax program. And sales tax are generally set and collected by the state and used for local needs and policies and things of that nature. So it's local. It's defined by what that community in that state needs done, whether it's infrastructure or support services or things of that nature. So standardizing an e-commerce sales tax across the entire country, Pete, I have to admit, I'm in favor of it for one particular reason. Once you give somebody something, it's very difficult, almost impossible to take it away, right? So you have to set the standardized e-commerce sales tax at the highest level of any state in the country, and maybe even bump it up a little bit. So if your sales tax in Texas is 0, or that's income tax, but the sales tax is very minimal, you can't set the bar. The bar has to be set at the highest possible level, and then bump it a little bit. And the reason that'll work, Pete, is that I don't know a single person that shops online and pays attention, understands, or looks at what the sales tax is. It's all about the item they're purchasing, and is it higher or lower than the other site that they went to? I get an X on Amazon, I can get it on Y with eBay or direct to the consumer. So you know what? Make it standardized, bump it up to the extreme, make some more money for the taxes. I'm all in favor of it. People aren't going to pay that much attention to it. It'll make a little bit of noise, but nobody that I know focuses on sales tax of any level and making a decision online when they push the buy now button. So I say go for it. I think there could be some good benefits. The key, Pete, is trying to monitor it and put rules and regulations around it. Could just crush the whole thing and go back to the established processes that are already set up and make it a state issue. But I'm in favor of it. I like it. Make sure you bump it as high as you can to cover all the states out there that have various degrees of sales tax. And let's go. Let's make it happen. So I'm in favor of it for those reasons. And that's all I have on that topic, my friend.
Well, Doug, on behalf of all 1.2 million of us here in the great granite state of New Hampshire, you can kiss my ass. Okay? Live free or die. Do not tread on me. Taxation is theft. No. So having worked in e-commerce, having worked for the company whose name is synonymous with this tax question. So,
Yep.
the Wayfair case, when it came to how we deal with right now, it really was established because, they were stuck in this nexus of selling all over the country. And I don't know why they didn't go over and get Amazon or somebody. But, here's the deal. Is it a sale? Yes. Do we have sales tax in my state? No, because we are civilized people here who don't expect to stick it to you like that. We find other ways to stick it to the numerous tourists that come here, like meals taxes and hospitality taxes, so that people who actually do live here don't have to be messed with so much. You want a sales tax, Doug? God bless you. You can have it there in Colorado. Don't bring that noise to the Granite State where we don't have an income tax and we don't have a sales tax. I'm not sure the kids here can read, but I will tell you this. We're not going to have additional costs put onto our products just because somebody decided it makes it easier.
Yeah.
No. Every state should have to figure this out on its own. It creates a lot more jobs for my friends in tax firms. God bless you. And it gives people reasons to have these conversations and arguments about where they ought to live. You want to tax something? Move to California. Okay? You want to sell e-commerce? Have it sent to your friend in New Hampshire's address. You don't have to worry about that extra 8%.
Yeah. I'm doing some math
Is that
here.
definitive enough for you, my friend?
Well, I'm doing some math. I'm not being disrespectful, but the great state of New Hampshire represents 0.004% of the population in the United States. So we'll put that in perspective. That's 0.4%. So you would be voted, and the great state of New Hampshire would lose.
And the great state of New Hampshire say to kiss our ass. We got all the guns anyway. Here's where it goes, Doug. The 0.1% of people go to places like Harvard, and that's what makes them so spectacular, right?
Yep.
Just because there aren't a lot of them doesn't mean that I'm important. There are other states that don't have income taxes, like I believe Washington State is another one, where it's a very big deal. People from Oregon and neighboring states go there all the time to buy their stuff. It increases their ability to make revenue. No, taxation is theft. And having additional taxation just because it's easy is the kind of thing that, I fine then. We're going to have a flat across the board tariff on everything. It just makes it easier, Doug. No, absolutely not. I wonder what Bitcoin Boy is saying. He's probably got his shirt off right now, pacing like, oh, I wish it was on right now. Like he's probably losing it because he makes me look like Gavin Newsom in my opinions about this stuff. So I'd love to see what Keenan's doing right now. I'll have to ask him at the end of the show.
Yeah.
But Doug, you're wrong. How do you like that? Wrong. You are so wrong.
We often ask our listeners and our guests, give us your thoughts and your feedback, right? We'll see. We'll get the feedback from the masses out there. So
yeah, I'll give them my feedback too. So you go ahead and comment on the video and you comment on LinkedIn. You get some good old Uncle Pete's going to have some stuff to say to you too.
Yeah,
okay. Yeah. Well, I'll bring it home for us with my last topic here. And this is something that over the course of last year, about the same time we started talking about before we did our end of year show, we knew that things were going to change. We knew that rates were going to change, and we knew that the economy was going to change. And with that, party's over. Party's over for these kids in freight forwarding. It's like selling junk bonds for milking in the 80s. They were like all these guys that were salespeople out there that never really had to sell in a hard environment. Because like, oh, I've got space on a ship. Who wants it? Who wants it? It's like you're dangling a piece of bacon in front of 50 dogs, right? And now you're going to have to work. And what we've been seeing, probably over the course of, I'm going to say the last 4 months, and it's going to get real serious now, is freight forwarders really working. So you're beginning to see people out in the industry doing everything they can to be disruptive financially in order to either reclaim business that they lost during the pandemic or to gain as much volume as they possibly can so that they can try to lower their costs and make a bit more profit. But the push is on, my friends. So the back to reality of working for a forwarder and the good times being gone, they're gone. This is now a time where you're going to see salespeople hitting the streets, hitting the bricks, and all the wannabes. They're not going to be around for much longer. And I want to expand on that to go a level up. We're not just talking about salespeople, buddy. We're talking about a lot of freight forwarders who did not see increases in file volume, who did not see increases in the amount of expansion they were having with bringing on new customers, new logos, if you will, into the business. I think we're going to see maybe 2 to 3 years of a lot of people just falling off. A lot of assets that are going to be out there, a little toxic, that no one wants to buy. And you're just going to see a lot of freight forwarders fall off the wayside. You're going to see a lot of people in sales, just like when real estate's great. You're going to be going back to working at the barista counter because they were selling based on nothing but cost rather than trying to sell a relationship, trying to sell an ideology, and knowing what they're actually doing. So, hey, nah, goodbye. I think 2023 is the year where that starts.
Yeah. Well, I would agree 110%. Right. We talked about the roaring 20s when we started coming out of COVID to the extreme level. And that was about 18 months. We called it, we spoke about it. Now, as far as the service providers and ocean freight and consumers that touch it indirectly or directly, it's here. And the one piece that I had not thought of, Pete, that you made mention of is what's the fallout going to be? I think meaning businesses going out of business, right? Just like whenever over-the-road trucking rates were skyrocketing and you had all these people that were leaving larger companies to go start their own trucking company. It's me and my neighbor and a guy I met drinking a beer at a bar, and we're going to get our licenses and we're going to go out and crush it because it's so profitable right now. And you're seeing a lot of those guys and those trucking companies and gals, folding up again and going back over to the traditional asset-based carriers. So same exact thing. I think there's going to be some fallout. We'll see that probably second quarter, third quarter. We'll start seeing it. They're going to hang on as long as they possibly can. But yeah, the fallout from businesses dropping out and going out of business is going to be pretty substantial. So I would agree with you on this one.
Yeah. I always joke about this, but there needs to be a Scared Straight version for freight forwarding, like that old TV show where they would take first-time offenders from high school and they'd have them go to a real prison. And I've been saying it for a year when I was watching all these young guys that were selling these upstart freight forwarders that, like you said, somebody built in their garage using CargoWise. And you just see them and you're like, look in my eyes, 30 years. I've seen it come and go. I've seen the big eat the small and the small eat the big. I've seen the government wreck them. I've seen companies that have had 4 or 5 clients that all went bankrupt at the same time. You don't know what you're signing up for. So if you think it's always going to be this easy, you better learn to work hard because this industry is about to get hard. And if you're not ready for that, if you haven't been through it before, if you don't know what it means to knuckle up and make it work, this ain't the job for you, man. Go back to selling pharmaceuticals back in Poughkeepsie, but this ain't the place for you, man. Now for operations, I think it's about to be a nice breather from 2 years of burning hellfire. It might be a little bit better as the volumes come down. But you might want to go sell that beach house because I don't think you're making the payments on it if you're not really willing to hustle. So that's
I like it.
That's my brutal opinion, and I guess it's a great way to end it. One thing I will say is, Doug, must be getting pretty close to doing our show where we start talking about next year's predictions.
Yeah. You know what? We need to talk about that. Here's the beauty of this show, Pete. It's like most of it is ad lib. We've not talked about that. So we should come up with that date and kick it out here very quickly. So keep an eye out. And we'll even tell you where we were wrong in 2022. But you know what? We're forward thinking. We got the guts to throw out some predictions, not just some fluffy language. We're not a lame duck session, Pete. We're going to tell it like it is, and we're going to work.
I had my lame duck session when I got laid off. It was a wonderful month of not having that people scream at me about where their cargo was. I don't need lame ducks. I don't think I've ever been as happy as as I have been lately, to just be answering people's questions about freight and going out there and trying to win business. And there is no lame duck in this business, but we have the courage to put our ideas out there. And I think we're also old enough to realize we're not always going to be right, and that's okay. But someone's got to at least put it out there. And I'm proud of the fact the show does it every week. And I'm certainly very proud to be on it with you. And I did say I was thankful for you, Doug, in my Thanksgiving prayers when I went to church that morning, because I am that guy. And I'm thankful for the show and Keenan and Cap Logistics for all they do for us. And I'm thankful to all of you, our viewers and our listeners, who continue, the thousands of you, to come and watch this week after week. And show up again next week when we'll have an excellent edition of Global Trade This Week. Thanks, Keenan. Thank you, Doug. You're the greatest. And we'll see you again next week.
You got it. Thanks, Pete. See you, everybody.